If you're a senior living on Social Security and you've been thinking about retiring in Panama, I need you to watch this video before you make any decisions. I'm not a travel blogger. I'm somebody who spent actually 5 months in Panama City specifically to find out if it was a place to retire. I wanted to see if it was financially safe and what everybody, all these travel bloggers promised. And what I found out was very different from what is being told to you online. I left, and today I'm going to show you exactly why, starting with the numbers. What I'm sharing today are my actual costs, not these estimates from the bloggers that say you can live there for $1,500 in luxury, because that's just not true. Okay, first part is the rent trap. You'll see articles saying that seniors can rent these comfortable apartments for $700 to $900 a month and they get everything that they ever wanted. This is not true. Here's the safety problem with that figure. Those apartments do exist, but they are not in safe neighborhoods. I stayed in Panama City, which is a very big city, and there are only a few areas that are even safe for expats. And these areas are super expensive compared to other areas. These $700 to $900 apartments are in neighborhoods with real safety concerns. I've looked at a few and the outside was completely covered with barbed wire. You couldn't go out at night and walk around. They were just unsafe, but they are available. The areas that you can actually live in, there are a couple areas, but they're super expensive and rents run $1,500 to $3,000 or more per month. And that's before utilities. So here's something that nobody mentions, the air conditioning. So in Panama, it is very, very hot and humid. I can't stress this enough. Every day is over 90 degrees and humidity basically never gets below 80. I have walked into subways before and it had to be 150 degrees down there. So you have to run your air conditioning nonstop in order for your apartment to even become a little bit cool. We ran one AC, and remember that the ACs in Central America are not the same as what you're accustomed to in the United States. We have these big units that cool down the house, super quickly. No, it's those little units, the little wall units, and they're not very powerful. We ran the AC 24 hours a day, and I don't think that our apartment got below 80 degrees once. And then there's the food costs. So if you eat entirely like a local, fried foods, high sugar packaged snacks, rice, beans, local produce, you probably can eat for $250. But if you're like me and you want to eat healthy, these are not healthy options. And sometimes you just want familiar foods, right? You can eat Panamanian local cuisine, but sometimes you just want something that you're more accustomed to. And the moment that you try to buy imported products, it is super expensive. Or if you go to a restaurant that has any type of non-Panamanian food, such as if you want an omelet, for example, and there's only certain areas that have these, and they're where all the tourists go, of course, so it's more expensive. But an omelet and a cup of coffee, $15. So that's kind of comparable to US prices. Of course you can get cheaper stuff elsewhere, but if you want safe quality food and something you're familiar with, you're going to pay a lot more. So if you buy groceries that you're familiar with and eat at restaurants even a couple times a week, you're looking at probably $500 to $800 a month for food. You can do it a lot cheaper, but you're basically going to be eating street food and low quality products and staying home. And I'm not sure if that's what you pictured yourself doing in retirement. Okay, so here's something that's important for me, especially. I was a hospital CEO for 20 years, so I always have interest in hospitals. And there's two types of systems in Panama. And what you'll hear from the travel bloggers, oh, healthcare is so cheap. Well, it's really not. So there's two types of systems, public and private. The public systems, and this is information from all the locals I have talked to. I took Spanish lessons, so I met a lot of people and got to know them. The public system there is incredibly bad, incredibly bad. They don't even want to go to it. They have to. There's no choice because they can't afford the private systems that we think of. So when we think of healthcare, we think of these type of US hospitals that have all these amenities and high services, and they do have those in Panama, but they're in private hospitals. And these private hospitals are owned by investors typically. And so they're there to make a profit. One hospital is associated with Johns Hopkins, which is great, except the prices are way higher. For example, a CT in the US might cost you $3,000. I'll just say that. At least in the US, you do have insurance that covers some of it. In Panama, a CT is probably $2,000. So it may be 30 to 40% cheaper, but when you're traveling outside of the US, you typically don't have health insurance. Now, I will say basic tests are pretty cheap, right? You can go get labs, you can go see a doctor for, I don't know, $40 or something like that. But the real risk is if you have a major medical issue, an emergency, and you're not able to get back to the US and use your Medicare or your private insurance, you're going to owe a lot of money. And you can get travel policies, except they don't always cover a lot of the stuff. And you read reviews, and a lot of people have big issues when they try to get reimbursement. So healthcare costs, I would say you could budget $100, $150 a month maybe, but that absolutely does not include if you have an emergency. That's going to be in the tens of thousands, just like it would be in the United States. So a little bit about transportation. So what I found in Panama is, so I was in Panama City the whole time, visited a couple outside areas, but didn't travel to other areas because the transportation is really difficult. If you go a couple hundred miles in a bus, it might take you 10 hours. There is no fast or cheap way to get to other cities. You either have to fly, which is several $100s, or you have to take a bus, which is like 20 hours. So I just stayed local, saw the Panama Canal, saw some of those things, but that was one of the real downsides of Panama, was the inability to get between cities. Within Panama City, you could get an Uber for pretty cheap, but the security was an issue. Not with the Ubers, but you can't really walk anywhere at night outside of these tourist areas. So for example, there's a really nice area, Antigua, and that's where all the tourists go. And just for a cost comparison there, hotels in that area are between $300 and $700 per night. So you go there at night, you can walk around, it's a small area. It is literally bordered by one of the, if not the most dangerous areas in Panama City. This is what you don't hear in the travel blogs. So when you leave that area, you had to take an Uber. There's just no way that you could walk. It wasn't safe. You couldn't take the metro system at night. In the day, it was perfectly fine, but at night, it was not safe. And because you had to walk through bad areas to get to the metro system. So if you went out, you had to plan around an Uber, and sometimes they were difficult to get. And here's one thing that I don't think anybody really realizes. There's a currency advantage when you travel, but it doesn't exist in Panama because they use the dollar. So right now, I'm visiting Korea, and there's a nice exchange rate. It's super cheap here, and I get an advantage exchanging dollars to the Korean won. If you're curious whether Korea is a safe destination to retire, let me know in the comments for sure. I'd love to talk about that. But countries like Mexico, Portugal, Thailand, you get this advantage when you exchange the dollars. It does not exist in Panama because they use the dollar. So I know this sounds completely negative, but it's the reality. And there were some cool things about Panama, but not as a retirement destination. I would say if you want to go visit Panama, go for a week. Just know you're going to spend money, stay in a nice hotel, be comfortable, go see the Panama Canal, go see the cool things that they have there. So just to summarize, here's what Panama basically costs. If you want to have a decent, comfortable life, rent about $1,500 to $3,000 a month. Electricity, you should figure $200 to $300 per month. Food and groceries, $500 to $800 a month. Of course, you can get them cheaper, but if you actually want to enjoy your food, be healthy, go out and eat occasionally. Healthcare, I'd probably budget $150 a month, but that does not include any emergencies. And then transportation, I would say $50 to $150 per month. So roughly about $2,500 to $4,500 per month. But when people say that you can retire for $1,500 comfortably in Panama, it's not what we consider a comfortable retirement. And with Social Security, the average Social Security payment is around $1,900. So if you really did want to go to Panama, you would probably have to subsidize your monthly expenses out of your savings. So my channel is about protecting you and protecting your financial security during retirement and after 60. So if you're interested in this type of information, hit the subscribe, and I look forward to you joining our journey.